Several times today we've tried to give the century some kind of perspective. It's not, of course, just celebratory, and to help us do that again, we're joined by one of the country's most distinguished professors, friend Cornel West, educated in part at Princeton, though teaching at Harvard. Nice to have you here with us.
Happy holidays.
And Happy New Year's to you. When you look back, what's the great moment in the century, if there is one for you?
I think the great moment is actually a process. It's a process of decolonization, when the vast majority of inhabitants on the globe began not simply to fight against colonialism, but most importantly to affirm their sense of self-worth and self-respect. Absolutely right. Because even in this moment of joy and hope, I think it's impossible to talk about joy without talking about misery, because joy is transfigured misery. Similarly, so hope transfigured despair. And you think of the AIDS epidemic right now in Africa that's ravaging that rich continent. You think of oppressed people still struggling, Kurds in Turkey, indigenous peoples in America, and so forth. That even as we celebrate, and we have a right to celebrate, but we have the underside, and that's very important. I think back 1900, Thomas Harding talked about that aged thrust, frail, gaunt, and small, and blast beruffled bloom, who chosen thus to fling his soul upon the growing gloom. We have to have a quest for the best through a wrestling with the worst. And so I think even at this moment, no false securities, no seductive idolatries, struggle for democracy must go on. We would not be here if those...
Do you find some parallels between now and the beginning of the 20th century? There was this extraordinary optimism then?
Yes, indeed. There's an evasion of the deep problems, the wealth inequality. We've got 3 of the richest human beings in the world who have more wealth than the bottom 48 countries. The top 225 individuals have more wealth than 2.7 billion human beings. Brother Martin Luther King Jr. said we're part of one garment of destiny. We are. We're connected. Not just you and I, but you and I with brothers and sisters in Guatemala, in Australia, in Africa, and so forth. And those who died, because we're at the deathbed of a century, not just a celebration of a new one. Those who died, the millions gone, so that we could celebrate fighting for freedom and democracy. We've got to keep their tradition alive, even as we party tonight.
It's hard to live in America and think that maybe race is the great unfinished piece of business for the country.
I think that's true, but I think when we talk about legacies of white supremacy, it's inseparable from those of male supremacy, it's inseparable from heterosexism, and most importantly, it's inseparable from the increasing economic inequality. And those of us who are fundamentally devoted for living and dying for the best of democracy, we're going to ensure that those folk in the 20th century didn't die for nothing, so we can pass that baton on to the younger generation.
We were just talking between ourselves, and I apologize, we're going faster than we usually. Sometimes you and I sat down and talked for hours. But we were talking about the discovery of the new African library at Timbuktu in Mali. Is this the kind of cultural discovery which makes its way around the world to the betterment, to the extent of confidence for all people of color?
Oh, indeed. I mean, one is the discovery of new papers. I mean, we knew about the library itself, but the new papers in the library. Exactly. But it's, again, it's an affirmation of the dignity of African people. We know that the 20th century has been in part a century in which the denigrating of African people. In fact, Marcus Garvey put it well when he said, the world in the 20th century has made being black a crime. I intend to make it a virtue. Not by putting others down, but affirming the humanity of people of color. And the library, I think, with the new papers discovered, certainly is an acknowledgement of African learning, scholarship, science and technology, but more than that, not just fetishizing science and technology, because we need not just improved means, we need some improved ends, and the ends are beyond the greed, beyond the bigotry, on to justice.
Now, scholars should not be immune from making predictions, Professor. Predictions for the next century, at least for the early part of it?
It depends on how courageous we are. It depends on how broad our vision is. And I think that in many ways I would want to call for a new commitment to old challenges, which is let justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. If we can live up to that, that takes us back to Jerusalem, Hebrew scripture, Christian Old Testament. If we can live up to that, then we're in good shape.
Happy New Year.
Thanks so much.
Great to have
you. Take good care.
Cornel West, professor at Harvard, one of the easiest, one of the best people to be taught by in the whole country. Thank you very much for coming. Now, we'll be back in just a minute. The Ephesus Seventh-day Adventist Church on West 123rd Street in New York City.